Okay, so I've got all my elements. They're all cut out and they're all color balanced. Now it's just using dodge and burn on this fin to get it to work a little bit better. So I'm going to start with midtones and burning. And on the bottom edge of things, because it feels like the light source is coming from here, right? And everything is shaded underneath. I want to get the bottom edges of things. The problem with taking sea coral as a reference is that underwater you don't have clear light sources. Everything's so diffused. I need to kind of burn in those shadows a little bit between these elements. And basically just give them some variation that objects on land usually have. Especially in the crease of the neck here, behind that horn. Just burning it down, using a little bit of that spotted texture, that pattern to come through. Definitely these cast shadows. Let those darken. All right. Then I can use my targeted eraser. Take care of other issues. Maybe widen it a bit and take its opacity down. So this growth feels more gradual. Some of these areas. And it looks like it's brightening it up, but that's just because what's behind it is already fairly well lit. Okay. And I can go back to burning, and defining certain areas. I think that will work. Okay, now we move on to kind of the final clone stamping. And before I just used it here to show how to work on a texture a little bit, bring some of that hippo leg texture into the skin. Very subtle there. Now I'm going to use that to help transition some of these other textures. Because you can erase away like that and get rid of hard edges. But Clone Stamp will actually let you add kind of a glazing layer. So this is how it works. This is the Clone Stamp tool. You want to have it on its own layer at the very top of everything else. I have it marked red because it affects everything. It's not like the other component layers. And for instance, I can use it across the whole surface. So if I wanted to bring this texture into here, I can do that. And all I have to do is hold down Option to target what I want to copy from, like that shadow, and then let go. I'm at a 51% opacity, and then I just paint and it will follow that target. And when I want a new target, I have to hit Option and reposition it. So here, if I want this texture, put it in. If I want this kind of fur texture, that highlight, I can put that in. Transition it. If I want the shadows, I can use those to help break these pieces apart. And because it goes over the top of everything, I use it soft edged, but then I can erase from it, or I can play with the opacity of it until it feels right. So this is a tool for subtlety. So let's bring a little bit of this texture at a very low opacity into this edge, just to brighten this up a little bit. Give it a little more dimension at the belly. And I'm using my tablet so that it's pressure sensitive to size, so it's not always filling up that whole circle. That'll help differentiate the body from the leg. I want to downplay those kind of water spots. I can clone stamp in some of this more open texture, unspotted texture. If I want to downplay the contrast on any singular element, like the ear here, I can clone stamp in some mid-tone. This isn't dodging and burning, it's actually building up more textures to transition between. And the only danger is overdoing it and making everything too soft looking. Now I have that killer whale body right there. And sometimes how I'll use this is I'll take that at a really low opacity. Oops, wrong layer. And I'll use this as kind of a unifying color kind of texture, and then go up to clone stamp, turn it on, go up to clone stamp, and work with it. So if I like this kind of bluishness, I clone stamp with that and bring it in. And then just turn off the killer whale. You see that blue is there from that killer whale. And you can do this with any kind of texture fill. Bring in those effects and then clone stamp them in on another layer. So get some of that bluish killer whale plasticity onto my coral here. I can do that. I want to be careful of not going over the edge. Now the other thing I can do is take that killer whale layer at that really low opacity, warp it, so Command T, warp, stretch it over a lot. See, it's over almost the entire body here. As a texture overlay. Yeah, why not? Let's just push it all the way. Okay, and now it's like he's encased in this weird kind of bubble. Now what I can do is turn that layer off Once I'm happy with my clone stamp job, actually even if I'm not happy with it, but I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to say Layer, Merge Visible, but before I click Merge Visible, I'm going to hold down Option. Oh, and before I do that, I want to turn off my background layers. So it's a nicely cut out with only the empty grid behind it. So now if I hold down Option and go Layer, Merge Visible, that will leave me with a layer on top of everything that's merged together. Why would I do that? Turn on the background again. So now that I have this layer, I can use my magic wand and select with contiguous unchecked all the empty space, and then say select, or just leave that empty space selected, go back to my killer whale bubble, and then delete that. And then I can move that layer up and on top, and I can play with different blending modes. Overlay's nice, because it puts all those blues kind of in the shadows a little bit more. So that makes it all kind of work a little bit better together. Unifies the light source. Soft light is very subtle, so that can be helpful. I'm liking what that does with the blues and the shadows. Hard light is a little bit more extreme, and that's a little too softening, especially in the midtones up there. Pin light is one I'll often use, but that's a little too extreme up top. So I think soft light is the one I want to use here. That's at 34%. That's with nothing. That's with everything. And I decide what's a good amount. So that's like a full texture overlay on top of my creature. And the reason I had to combine it all into one layer, one free-floating layer, was just so I could cut it out cleanly here. And if there's something that just doesn't quite work, like the coral gets a little confusing here, then I can just use my eraser and erase it out in those areas. As long as you're using a soft-edged eraser, you'll have pretty good control. This helps take a lot of the edge off. All right, so finishing it all up, what I want is one clean layer. So now I can turn off all this stuff underneath. Oh, do I want these? I don't think I want this. So turn off all of my different components now that make up my creature. I can leave them in there. I don't need to delete them, but I'm just going to turn them off. Turn off even my clone stamp things because I already combined them into this. So now I just have my texture overlay and my creature underneath. And I need to make sure it's all clean. And so one area that wasn't was right here. I could tell that from where it overlaid. So I'm going to make it a 100% opacity, a little bit smaller. Clean up that edge. Sometimes it helps to see white behind. Sometimes it helps to see black